It was supposed to be just another Sunday roundtable, another televised political segment forgotten by Monday. But this time something was different. The lights in the studio felt hotter, the air tighter. Former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, sharp in a crimson blazer, sat with a forced smile. Across from her, Rep. Jasmine Crockett adjusted her mic, unaware that a storm had been quietly planned. Producers had been whispering for days, someone wanted fireworks, and Bondi was ready to deliver. From the opening minutes, it was clear. This wasn't a debate. It was an ambush. Bondi launched in with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Congresswoman Crockett, do you even understand the Constitution? I mean, you're a freshman, right?" The panel fell silent. Even the moderator looked stunned, but Crockett didn't flinch. She blinked once. She gave no reaction. The camera zoomed in. Millions watching at home leaned closer. Bondi smirked. She thought she had drawn blood. But what came next would change everything. And nobody, not even Crockett, could predict how emotional this confrontation would become. "Let me rephrase," Bondi continued, her voice dripping with condescension. "What gives you, a first-term congresswoman, the right to lecture seasoned officials on matters of law?" A quiet gasp rippled through the audience. It wasn't just the question. It was the tone. Sharp, deliberately humiliating. But Crockett didn't take the bait. She folded her hands calmly. "Are we having a conversation?" she asked softly. "Or are you here to belittle women you think don't belong?" The studio froze. Bondi's smirk faltered for just a second, but she pressed on. "I'm just saying, your legal knowledge seems thin. Did you even practice before coming to Congress?" That hit different. For viewers who knew, it was a lie. Crockett had built her career in Texas courts, representing the voiceless, mothers fighting evictions, teens wrongfully charged, families broken by injustice. But she still didn't raise her voice. She looked Bondi in the eyes. "Are we now dismissing real courtroom work because it wasn't televised?" No one spoke. Even the moderator didn't know where to go next. This wasn't a political segment anymore. It was a reckoning. And it was just getting started. In that split second of silence, something flickered in Crockett's eyes. Not anger, not fear. Something deeper. A memory. She was 12 again, sitting on the edge of her mother's hospital bed, listening to her whisper. "When they speak down to you, don't shout. Don't cry. Let your truth be louder than their noise." That voice echoed in her chest as she leaned forward. "I practiced law for over a decade, Ms. Bondi," she said gently. "I didn't have cameras. I had clients, poor, black, and forgotten. People who couldn't afford the justice system you helped build." Bondi blinked. Just once. Crockett continued, her tone never rising. "And I didn't come to Congress to be congratulated. I came because the system we both claim to serve is broken. And I've seen it, up close, in ways you probably never have." The room was completely still. One producer quietly wiped a tear. Bondi shifted in her seat. Crockett hadn't just defended herself. She had summoned a truth that transcended politics, a story too raw to ignore. But the real storm was only beginning. America was about to learn who Jasmine Crockett really was. You could feel it, the shift in the air. Pam Bondi looked unsettled. Her perfectly prepared lines suddenly didn't land the same. Her smirks weren't getting laughter anymore. Even the co-hosts avoided eye contact with her. But Crockett wasn't finished. She leaned in just slightly and said, "Do you want to talk legal credentials? I'd be happy to compare resumes, but I won't let this become a game of who can speak louder or throw the meanest jab." The calm in her voice was unnerving and powerful. Bondi's voice cracked just slightly as she tried to regain control. "Well, Congresswoman, maybe you're just good at rehearsed speeches." Crockett paused, then smiled softly. Rehearsed? No, Ms. Bondi. These are scars, not speeches. The room fell silent. One of the camera operators whispered, "Damn." People watching from home sat still, some gripping tissues, others recording clips on their phones. This wasn't a takedown. It was something deeper, something sacred. Bondi had tried to drag Crockett down, but Crockett had turned the floor into a platform, not to defend herself, but to speak for everyone who'd ever been underestimated. And that shook people. As Crockett breathed through the silence, another memory rushed in like a wave. Her father's last day alive. He was quiet, too weak to speak much, but before the machines took over, he looked her in the eyes and whispered, "Make them respect your silence before they ever hear your voice." And here she was now, living that moment on national television. Bondi, searching for her next move, reached for talking points. Your party has failed communities of color. Crime is up. Schools are down. You care more about Twitter trends than real change. But Crockett didn't flinch. She answered slowly. I don't need to trend. I need the children in my district to eat. I need the kids who live in fear of gunshots every night, to know someone in Washington hears them. She looked directly into the camera. And if that makes me unpopular with political elites, so be it. I didn't come to play politics. I came because I couldn't sleep at night knowing silence was killing people. A mother watching in Detroit sobbed. A college student in Atlanta texted her group chat. I've never cried like this watching a debate. The nation was waking up. Pam Bondi tried once more to steady herself, but she was slipping. Let's not make this emotional, she said, almost pleading now. We're here to talk policy, not personal stories. Crockett tilted her head. Her voice never changed. Pam, policy is personal, if you've lived at the bottom of it. She leaned forward again. You ever watch your neighbor's electricity get cut off in the middle of a Texas summer? You ever have to explain to a mother why the system let her son rot in jail for stealing a sandwich? Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke, but her voice stayed strong. You talk about law like it's clean, like it's fair, but in the neighborhoods I come from, it shows up in courtrooms with broken ceilings and judges who've already decided your fate before you speak. Bondi had nothing left to say. The audience knew it. So did she. What was meant to be a humiliation had become something else. A story of hurt, of fight, of rising from places so dark they don't even have names. And viewers, across race, age, and party, were wiping tears from their eyes. But Jasmine wasn't done yet, not even close. The cameras kept rolling. No one cut to commercial. No one dared. Pam Bondi sat back, crossing her arms, but her voice had lost its edge. Still, she reached for one last shot. Well, she said coldly, maybe if you spent less time chasing headlines and more time learning the law, your constituents wouldn't be struggling. The silence was deafening. Crockett blinked, but this time there was no pause. She leaned slightly forward. Do you know what it's like to be the only black woman in a courtroom and still be treated like a defendant, not an attorney? Bondi didn't answer. Crockett's voice didn't rise, but it tightened, her pain just beneath the surface. You talk about headlines? I was defending children when no cameras were watching. I was showing up for grieving mothers before the media cared. Her lips trembled, but she didn't break. I didn't come here to be liked. I came here to break a cycle that has choked my community for generations. A grandmother in Milwaukee turned up the volume. A young teacher in Baltimore wiped her eyes. This wasn't just politics anymore. This was truth. Raw, uncomfortable, and finally being spoken out loud. What most viewers didn't know was that before the show, Crockett had sat alone in the green room, praying. Not for victory, but for control, for the strength to sit in front of a nation that still doubted women like her, and to speak without breaking. She had written nothing down. No notes, no talking points. Just memories of courtroom benches and mothers who held photos instead of children. So now, as Bondi visibly squirmed in her seat, Crockett didn't gloat. She didn't grin. She simply told the truth. Do you know how many times I've walked into jails to meet 15-year-olds? Kids tried as adults because the system forgot their age but never their skin. She looked around the room. Do you know how many I couldn't save? Her voice cracked. Bondi looked away. The moderator finally tried to interject, but it was too late. The audience had already shifted. Even online, the comments were flooding in. I'm crying. I've never heard a politician speak like this. She's not performing. She's bleeding. People weren't just watching anymore, they were grieving with her. And they were listening, truly listening, for the first time. Jasmine paused. She reached into her blazer pocket, and what she pulled out wasn't a document or a stat. It was a folded letter, old, creased, weathered by time. This, she said softly, was written by a 17-year-old girl. Her name was Tamia. She was facing 12 years for stealing diapers. The studio fell completely silent. She wrote me this after I got her charges dropped. She said, "Thank you for not looking at me like I was a mistake." Crockett held back tears, swallowing hard. She's in college now, majoring in nursing. A sob echoed from the audience. Pam Bondi couldn't look up. Jasmine didn't press it. She folded the letter again, gently, like it was glass, and placed it back in her pocket. This isn't about me. It never was, she said. It's about every forgotten voice in America that never gets a camera, never gets a second chance, and never gets justice. She looked into the lens, and I'm not leaving until they do. Across the country, living rooms went quiet. Phones slipped from hands, and for the first time in years, some viewers felt something new watching politics. Hope. Painful, raw, real. But hope. Crockett looked at the host. Then, without anger or pride, she asked, "Can I share one number?" The moderator nodded. 82%, Crockett said quietly. That's how many defendants in low-income areas plead guilty without a trial. Not because they're guilty, but because they're scared. Scared they'll lose everything if they fight. She looked at Bondi. You know that stat, right? Bondi shifted uncomfortably. Crockett continued. And you ask why I push back so hard in Congress? Because that number isn't just math to me. It's faces. It's a boy named Darnell who cried in my office because he thought he'd never see his mom again. The audience was still. The producers didn't cut to commercial. Pam, Crockett said, you built your career in offices. I built mine in hallways of courthouses with broken water fountains and crying mothers. Bondi opened her mouth to speak, then stopped. Crockett added one last sentence. You came for a debate. I came to represent people who don't get invited to debates. The entire room shifted. Even the cameramen looked stunned. America was watching something they hadn't seen in years. A leader who didn't shout to be heard, but made silence feel holy. Just as the studio lights flickered during a commercial break, a young intern passed Crockett a bottle of water. She mouthed, "Thank you." Later, that same intern would post a video on TikTok, a short clip of Crockett's eyes, watery but unblinking, as she told the story of Tamia and the stolen diapers. That video would go viral in 6 minutes. But what no one knew yet was what the intern said next. She leaned down beside Crockett and whispered, "You don't know me, but I'm in law school because of you. I saw your speech in Dallas in 2021. I was homeless then." Crockett's lips parted, stunned. The intern smiled and said, "You told a room full of strangers that poor girls can change laws, so I believed you." Then she disappeared backstage. Back on air, Crockett collected herself, but her heart trembled. This wasn't just a debate, it was a legacy moment. The kind no one plans, but everyone remembers. Bondi re-entered the conversation, but her tone had changed. Her voice lacked the sting it once had. Because even she realized, this wasn't just a woman defending her career. It was a woman defending every unheard voice in America. Midway through the next segment, the camera caught something unexpected. The host, a man known for his tough exterior, was holding back tears. He cleared his throat and looked at Crockett. "Congresswoman," he said softly, "why do you think this conversation feels different?" Crockett looked down for a moment. Then she said, "Because people are tired of polished lies. They want messy truth. They want someone to say, yes, I've cried in parking lots after losing a case. Yes, I've broken down after leaving jail visits. Yes, this country hurts." She turned to the camera. "And I'm not ashamed to say that I hurt too." A woman in the audience broke into a sob. Another followed. The air in the room shifted, not from conflict, but connection. Pam Bondi, silent now, sat back in her chair. Not defeated, just different. Crockett wasn't fighting with her anymore. She was fighting for something, and everyone could feel it. The intern backstage wept quietly. A sound guy turned his mic off and bowed his head. The segment was no longer about politics. It was about pain and healing and the kind of courage that doesn't yell but saves lives. Just as the final segment began, a surprise twist no one expected changed everything. A caller was patched in live, a policy student from Texas. But it wasn't just any student. It was Tamia's little brother. "Hi," the young boy said nervously. "My name is Jalen, and Congresswoman Crockett. You helped my sister. You helped my family when nobody else would." The studio froze. Jalen sniffled. "She used to cry every night before court. And I thought I'd lose her forever. But then she came home. Because of you." Crockett pressed her lips together, tears forming. Bondi looked down. The boy continued. "Now she tucks me in every night. She cooks for me. She told me I can be anything because of you." A pin could have dropped in the studio. Then Jalen said one last thing. "You didn't just save her, ma'am. You saved me too." Crockett finally let a tear fall. No speeches, no defense, just truth. That moment swept across the country. And suddenly Crockett wasn't just a guest on a show. She was the face of something bigger than politics. She was the face of what it means to show up when it counts. The segment had nearly ended when something no one predicted happened. Pam Bondi leaned forward. Her voice, once sharp and commanding, was now small, uncertain. "I need to say something," she began. The host looked surprised. So did Crockett. Bondi's eyes welled up. "I came here ready to win," she admitted. "I had notes, strategies, lines rehearsed. I thought if I just pushed hard enough, I'd prove my point." She looked at Crockett genuinely. "But all I proved was how far removed I've become from real people's pain." The studio fell into complete silence. Bondi exhaled, then whispered, "I'm sorry, Congresswoman. I judged you based on where you came from, not where you've brought others." Crockett didn't gloat. She didn't even smile. She simply nodded, gracefully, humbly. Bondi added, "I may not agree with all your politics, but tonight, you reminded me what leadership really looks like." And just like that, America saw something it hadn't seen in years. Accountability, empathy, healing. Social media erupted. Tears flooded the comments. And across generations, people whispered the same thing. Maybe politics isn't dead after all. The bright studio lights dimmed. Crockett stood up slowly, clutching her folder and that now famous letter from Tamia. No reporters rushed her. No chaos followed, just stillness. And then, quiet applause. Not the kind you hear at political rallies. No chants, no signs, just raw human clapping. The kind people give when they've just witnessed something sacred. In the hallway, that same intern ran toward her and embraced her tightly, crying into her shoulder. "I've never seen someone do what you did," she whispered. Not without yelling, not without hate. Crockett hugged her back, then whispered, "That's the job. You show up, you stay calm, you tell the truth, and you carry the weight no one sees." Moments later, a producer approached her with shaking hands. He had been silent all show. "My brother's doing 15 years, he said. "I never thought a congresswoman would make me cry. But thank you." Crockett walked out into the night, heels clicking, heart heavy, but lifted. She hadn't planned to make headlines. She planned to be heard. And that night, for the first time in a long time, America actually listened. The car ride home was quiet. Crockett sat alone in the back seat, her phone buzzing non-stop. Reporters, friends, even strangers sending messages of love, heartbreak, and gratitude. But she didn't answer. She stared out the window at the city lights, the same street she used to drive through years ago when she was just a public defender. Broke, exhausted, and invisible. A red light stopped the car on South Lamar. She looked out and saw an old building where she once represented a single mother evicted with 2 toddlers. The memory struck hard. That night, Crockett had cried in her car for the first time on the job. Not because she lost, but because she couldn't do more. Now she was on national TV, turning that same pain into power. And yet the ache was still there, the weight of a million unheard voices riding with her. Suddenly she whispered to herself, "Don't let this moment be the peak." Because Crockett didn't want applause, she wanted change. And what she didn't yet know was that by morning her story would break the internet and inspire a movement. By 7 a.m., Crockett's name was trending in 42 states. Clips of the exchange played on every major network. Headlines read, "Jasmine Crockett turns ambush into masterclass." Calm, clear, unshakable. Pam Bondi breaks down. Crockett stands tall. But it wasn't the media that told the real story. It was the people. A mother in Newark posted, "I showed my daughter this. I told her, this is how you win without yelling." A former inmate in Ohio wrote, "I cried. That letter in her pocket, that could have been mine." One message stood out most. It was from an elderly woman in Mississippi. She wrote, "My husband died believing no one would ever speak for us. Last night, I felt him beside me. Jasmine Crockett, you were his voice." Crockett read it in her kitchen, hands shaking. She covered her face and wept, not because she was overwhelmed, but because she knew this was no longer just about her. This was about everyone who had ever been silenced, finally being heard. And for the first time in a long time, America was listening. Later that evening, Crockett sat alone on her front porch. She reached into her folder, past the news clippings and event notes, and pulled out a sealed envelope. It was addressed, "To the girl I used to be." Inside was a letter she wrote 3 years ago, back when she almost quit politics, when the hate mail was too much, when she felt like her voice didn't matter. She had never opened it. Until now. She unfolded the letter with trembling hands. "If you're reading this, you must have stayed. And if you stayed, I hope you finally see. You were never fighting alone." Her tears hit the paper. She closed her eyes. That round table, that ambush, had become something sacred, a testimony, a turning point. She had spoken for the voiceless, stood without shouting, cried without shame. And America didn't just watch. They felt it. If this story touched you, if it made you cry, if you felt seen, heard, or simply hopeful again, please like this video, leave a comment about the moment that moved you most, and hit that subscribe button, because stories like these deserve to be told loud, proud, and with all the heart they carry. Let's make sure voices like Jasmine Crockett's are never silenced again. Let's cry together, grow together, change the world together.